I think it's a challenge and a curse to explain what an archive is to people, and it's because it means so many different things to different people.
I'm still trying to figure out a way to describe it without making it sound so easy. Like that requires a master's degree. You're just writing folder titles and transcribing folder titles, and there's a lot more to it, as you know.
I usually say something to the effect that I'm an archivist who takes care of audiovisual stuff, like movies and video and audio. They'll often ask further questions about it. Sometimes they won't. Sometimes it'll just be like the conversation killer.
So sometimes I end up explaining to people the whole concept of special collections and what that means, that it's both rare books and manuscripts. But then sometimes I go into the women's studies angle of it because people can relate to that more easily if I just say that I help collect women's history for an academic library.
I tell them I'm an archivist with Duke Special Collections Library. People say, so what's that? And I'll explain that we have intellectual centers within Special Collections Library, work manuscript collections, and I work with some corporate records and things, and then they go, oh, archives, and then they know. And then they change the subject really fast.
I'm pretty sure that my husband understands what I do. I think my parents get it, and there's no way the rest of the family gets it. If people are actually interested, I'll explain. I work with the papers themselves. Sometimes it's not worth the effort to explain what an archivist is, so I'll go I'm a librarian.
I work with original primary source material, but that I work with the online component of it, helping people discover that it exists, discover what it's about, where it is, how it might be useful to their research. Sometimes I use the word metadata. I usually don't discuss it in that much detail with folks.
I love working with this stuff. I don't think I would ever want a job where I didn't get to work with this stuff. It's very exciting to open boxes that no one else has gotten to see. You never know what you're going to find. It's a constant process of discovery. And also, I just like organizing things, which obviously is a similar theme in librarianship and archives. We're saving material that is often not saved anywhere else, and history tends to be written from the perspectives of powerful white men, and it's an opportunity to create part of the historical record that would likely otherwise go untold.
The great collections are always the ones where people were obsessive about collecting everything that they did for an entire career, and sometimes it's because they go back and refer to it, other times because that they're just the kind of people that never throw anything away. You see some strange things in collections. One time, I think we got as part of a canned or frozen food advertising campaign, they did a purple dinosaur, like a stuffed plush toy or something, and it came in a box. And when you're working with a large mass of things, it just makes the day so much better when you can suddenly see these little things that pop up, and you're like, oh, that's just so great.
We have the more intimate relationship with the material. You get a lot of insight into human nature, and sometimes we get these archival crushes where you're working with someone's papers and you just, I don't want to say fall in love with them, but you become really enamored by them. You like them and you wish you could have met them.
I love the combination this job offers of physical and intellectual work. You feel like a stevedore sometimes, you're lifting and hauling and, you're doing all this really physical labor and doing crafty things with paper and folders. And then on the other hand, it's a real challenge to try to figure out how's a collection put together and how does this particular artist think about photography. And how is that, without the person being there, how is that, emphasized in his or her work?
I really like it that I get to provide researchers access to historical materials. 2 or 3 years ago, we digitized and published the Ad Views collection, and it consists of 10,000 old television commercials from the 50s all the way up through the 80s.
Rolling in the park one day, the colors seem so bright and gay, that we decided to take them home on a roll of Ansco-Chrome. Color always looks much better that way.
It was such a huge project. It's a lot of file space, it's a lot of metadata to wrangle, and we had a very tight timeline for turning the collection around, so we had to find creative ways to describe all of the materials in the collection in such a way that researchers could find things that interested them in a way that wasn't completely overwhelming.
We're doing these H. Lee Waters films, and I've seen this new transfer we had from this film that was made in, we don't know, it was sometime between 1937 and 39. To see faces at that time in a crowd, or even singularly close up, and my dad would have been born right about that time, and the connections between that era and this era is very transfixing. It doesn't matter if it's audio or video. Some people really prefer one over the other, but I don't. I've seen a lot of oral history footage that didn't need to be footage. It could have just been audio. Other people would argue with me about that. All those oral history navel-gazers, of which I'm one.
Hopefully, for people, it's a place that protects and preserves documents that have enduring value for future generations. I think that's where the archivist really steps in and helps sort through and finds the things that are the wheat versus the chaff, because there's a lot of ideas that, an archive saves everything forever, and if we actually did that, it would make it useless and pointless. So an archivist is in a really important position to kind of make sure that what is important is saved. And so I'm hoping that if people go to an archive, that's the experience that they get. They see the things that are useful to them or that are important to have protected.
Well, I use the word stewardship, and that's really how I see it, as being a stewardship or guardians of this material. And, you think to the National Archives and the number of people who go through its doors every day, not to do research, but to view our nation's most important historic documents, and the value of that. And what if nobody had kept them? And when they bring out the Emancipation Proclamation on special occasions. And even though we can't see it every day, it exists and it's there. So to me, it starts with the stuff, even though I complain about red rot. There's something really cool about red rot too. It's like there's a story in that item, and I even if it's an account book that on its own may not be really sexy to look at, but collectively with other ledger books or account books, it tells the story of a community and economic growth or what have you, and you just hope that someone out there is going to appreciate that item.
One of the things that I think about a lot is that, just like myself, everybody knows about libraries and books, and everybody thinks a library is books, but I would want to encourage people to realize that there are other things out there and other possibilities. And, if they get the opportunity, go to an archive, go to a historic site and ask them about the papers or the collections they have, and, start thinking about things in a more organic way, and, think about history and how it's made, but especially think about your own life and the narratives that sort of intersect your life and who created those narratives and for what purpose. I think that's, one of the great things about an archive is it can really open you up to, to find your truth anyway about what it is that's happening or has happened in the past.